Hi, this is Bill Hader.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Bill Hader. Bill Hader.
Welcome back to He Hard Hater, your one-stop shop for all things Bill Hader related. I'm your co-host, Deej. Don't you dare touch my milkshake, Barons.
And I'm some stinko's name you won't remember by the end of this, but for right now, I'm supposed to be your co-host, Casey Killingsworth.
And today we are talking about the return of Saturday Night Live after the writer's strike. This will be season 33. Episode 5 with Tina Fey as host and Carrie Underwood as the musical guest. Before we get to that, we got some Bill Gets Out of the House news. First thing for today, They Know, his horror film, is not only starting production, not necessarily filming yet, and Linda Cardellini has officially signed on to play Bill's character's ex-wife. I am personally very excited about this. I'm well familiar with all the work she's done on ER, Scooby-Doo, Dead to Me, and I just believe that Bill and Linda are going to make a great on-screen pair. What do you think, Casey?
I think that'll make a good pairing, too. I agree, and I would love to see that. I'd especially love to see Linda take on what could be a darker, more serious role.
And CinemaCon happened recently. Now, it hasn't been released to the world at large yet, but during the Warner Brothers presentation, they premiered a new full trailer for Bill Hader in Cat in the Hat, because the first one was just a teaser trailer. It's only just been presented at their presentation. We just have to wait till they get on the internet. I, for one, am looking forward to. And slightly unrelated news, but still kind of SNL, Coyote vs. Acme is finally being released. And I'm going to make sure to see that in the theater because I was so sad, like everybody with that got shelved. So I want to make sure we get butts in seats. And Casey, what do you have for us?
Well, I'd like to add that I'm also definitely planning to see Coyote vs. Acme. I have a bit of Bill was mentioned recently on another podcast. The Late Show with Stephen Colbert is ending next month on May 21st. Colbert himself was on the Smartless podcast with Jason Bateman, Will Arnett, and Sean Hayes. Colbert could only vaguely tease what his next project was. He hadn't fully announced it yet, but he's adapting the screenplay, writing a screenplay for another new Lord of the Rings movie. When they pressed him for more info on what his next gig is, he didn't say what he was doing yet, but what he did say was that Bill was a person that did something that he admired. What inspired him to go for this thing with a new Lord of the Rings movie. Bill's first gig after leaving SNL was writing for South Park for a season. He admired Bill for taking a gig that's just in service of something you love or someone whose work you admire and not worrying too much about what your status is and of your career and what your next gig is. So I thought that would be a nice thing to mention up top of this episode.
Yeah, now granted, he has worked on South Park on and off before then, but after he left SNL, that was his first full year on staff, which is awesome. And I'm still so pissed off about Stephen Colbert getting canceled. Just because I want to mention it was so sweet. The song that Billy Crystal did for him, look it up online, you gotta see it. It was just so lovely and heartwarming, and you never really appreciate what kind of voice Billy Crystal has. Aside from that, because we are a Bill Hader podcast, we're going to talk about the Bill Hader in the Tina Fey, Carrie Underwood episode. Bill was in 6 sketches for this edition, which is awesome. Now, not all the parts were huge, but it was enough that he got a lot of stuff on. First appearance we have is the commercial after the monologue. Annual, a new birth control pill that makes it possible for women to endure their period just once a year, albeit with dangerous side effects. This is slightly based on an actual pill called Seasonal, and that is designed for you to take for 3 months. The way a pill works is you take 3 weeks of hormones, 1 week off, there's your period, it becomes consistent. So if you just keep taking the hormones and just do the 1 week at the end of 3 months, this is taking it to the extreme. So this features Tina Fey, Amy Poehler, Kristen Wiig, and she's also the announcer. And the very first appearance from Casey Wilson, who got hired on after the break for the writer's strike because Maya Rudolph had left the show at that point. Well, I love Casey Wilson, don't get me wrong. It did lead to a slight delay for Bobby Moynihan coming on the show because he was kind of supposed to start around that time. But since Maya left, they needed to add a woman. Casey Wilson is very much underrated, I feel. The part with Bill is Tina Fey's woman. She's rampaging through the office with the fire axe. There's other escalations with different people in different scenes. Seen Andy and him just going crazy, running away from Tina Fey. Instantly hilarious. Casey, what's on your mind about this?
I do like just the visual of Tina swinging an axe at Andy and Bill as they're running away, along with Casey just devouring a whole cake by herself at a children's birthday party, and Amy ruthlessly beating the shit out of Fred, and Kristen starting to make out with a dog. The 90s MTV stammer cut visuals is the G minor, unearthly, high-pitched screeching audio behind it, because it does contrast well with the normal footage of the women painting and doing yoga and looking at shoes. It explains what this is. That part of it had a very fluid visual feel, if you'll pardon the expression. But even though being a cisgender male, I guess I'm not fully equipped to fully understand why this is funny, because I've never had a period, but at least I can just laugh at the scenes of chaotic black and white, and also just appreciate how much Tina and Robert Carlock were producing the second or third season of 30 Rock at this time, so it felt very Tina and very 30 Rock coded, layers of just hyper-specific absurdity to it, especially in the side effects.
It's not for everyone. Do not take if you are using MAOI inhibitors or if your occupation requires you to operate heavy machinery. Do not take Annuel if you plan to ever become pregnant, as it may turn your baby into a fire monster. In the days around your period, you may develop a leathery tail. Annuel may cause you to develop a second vagina. Notify authorities in your town when your period is imminent, as they may want to incarcerate you preemptively like a wolfman.
I may not be the target audience for part of this. I can giggle at the chaos of it, and I'll add this quick story. Around the time this aired, I heard these local morning DJs play this on the radio, so you only heard the audio of it, and you heard them laughing at it, but if you didn't see it, or if you didn't watch SNL, you didn't know why. And this was two guys and one girl, and at the end, you heard the woman DJ just say, "Oh, right, because when men think when it happens, it's so funny." But yeah, it's my take on Annual.
One of my favorite things to watch online is a series of videos where they use a TENS machine on different men, give them an example of what period cramps are like. As a cisgender woman, for me, they were horrible. They made me throw up, yet we're still expected to work and do all the lady things that people do. Dude just pointed out an interesting fact on the one SNL a day, where there's always one item in screen that's pink and everything else is in black and white. As a woman, of course, I would find that sketch incredibly hilarious. So we're moving on to SNL digital short, Grandkids at the Movies. The two grandsons, Kevin, played by Bill, and Thomas, played by Andy, they made a video to give to the grandfather to make it easier to watch a lot of new movies. So they would play like what they called the transforming robots.
Turn it off, Grandpa! It's too intense! Too much action! The green button! The green button! Grandpa, turn it off! Turn it off! This isn't real, Grandpa!
My personal favorite one was with the phone call.
Check out this scene from Michael Clayton.
Right now, there's a BCI unit pulling paint chips off a guardrail. Tomorrow, they're going to be looking for the owner of a...
That phone's in the movie, Grandpa. That's not your phone.
Don't get it.
You're okay.
Okay?
Hi.
Hi.
There's a caption at the end that says, "Get it at the store." This has always been one of my favorite digital shorts. Just the notion of making these things for their dear old grandpa to make sure he can watch movies without being too scared or too confused. Very, very charming.
This is an underrated gem of a digital short that is quite a favorite of mine. A couple things that are a bit odd about it are, first of all, neither SNL archives nor IMDb have a credit for who this older gentleman is playing the grandpa. And on top of that, it feels a little strange and haunting to laugh at a man saying,
Hi, has this ever happened to you? You're watching a movie and you get confused and scared because you don't recognize anyone?
as odd as it is, kind of making light of a man falling into the icy grip of either dementia or Alzheimer's, but you have to not think about that too much. You just have to laugh at Bill and Andy having cheaply green screened themselves into all the new Hollywood movies, wearing matching shirts of whoever they're playing, going, "Hi, Grandpa." Yeah, the Juno scene was funny. I like during the transforming robots, they tell Grandpa to press the green button to turn off the TV, rather than like change the channel or hit the input button to just switch it from the DVD player to the regular TV channels. Turn the TV off is his safest option. And as they're telling him this, we cut to a shot of the old man just smiling and nodding in approval of screaming over an already chaotic scene. And he says, "Isn't it great that my wife made this for me? I love my wife, even though we sleep in separate beds now." I got a big kick out of the Bill and Andy walking across the screen right during a big close-up of Daniel Day-Lewis in There Will Be Blood. This is another unique pre-tape in that there's not a lot of Lonely Island digital shorts that are framed like ads or commercials or infomercials. And it also has this feeling it could be an SNL sketch, or it could also be a bit that they wrote for the MTV Movie Awards or the Oscars. It got rejected because it does involve Andy Samberg and Bill Hader just green screening themselves into just various movie footage. And also it feels like it could be done in Will Ferrell's era too, because that was like the golden age of fake ads from unreliable narrators who may only be advertising an imagined product just to themselves. Yeah, it does remind me of like the Will Ferrell, Neil Diamond, The Rock is Bigfoot duets album, or the Wayne Porter versus Kim Plunkett Desert Island campaign ads he did with Chris Parnell in season 25. It could be done in any recent era of SNL. And the one twist I like is that the idea of this old man is selling you his personal copies of these movies with his grandkids because he recognizes them, and that makes him feel safe. But it didn't occur to him that you might not recognize them, and it might add to your confusion. That was one of the great deep cut digital shorts.
It was really nice to find out who the older gentleman was, because he nailed it. We are moving on to a game show called
What's that bitch talking about?
Two contestants, Tina Fey as Catherine, Bill Hader as Richard, Tina Thompson as the host. The concept of the show is they show three different women talking on the phone to somebody. First one is like a Jewish mother stereotype. The one I think is more like kind of a trailer trash thing. It reminds me a little bit of a Sketch of the Future with Megan Thee Stallion called Girl. So where they have to show this woman saying a bunch of stuff over the phone, and they're supposed to guess what that bitch is talking about. And there's so little information there that Richard can't understand it, but Catherine gets it.
Okay. Okay.
Richard, what's that bitch talking about?
I have no idea. I don't know how anyone could...
Oh, that's wrong. Catherine.
She's getting directions to a margarita party to celebrate her graduation from DeVry. She's looking forward to it, but she's a little apprehensive because the ghostly warnings of her father, the fisherman, still echo in the back of her mind.
Quite frankly, I don't know how she got it either, but it plays on the receipt that women speak slightly differently about things and not necessarily all using straight regular language. And the bonus round is,
who does that bitch think she is?
Bill was out after the first round, understandably, but his reactions to all that was going on was very much a highlight. And the three women had very different characters, which I enjoyed quite a bit. So not the best ever game show I've seen, but it had its moments until Bill left.
This was fun, too. It might be a bit of an acquired taste, but I liked it. And I think this might be Keenan's first game show host role, which it would kind of become a staple of the show 15 years later. Unfortunately, people would just get sick of game show sketches by then. But I do love the detail of that Keenan repeats that the grand prize that they're playing for is a 1992 canary yellow Mazda Protege. so possibly not even a car worth winning, and I like Casey's performance the best.
This was his first game show host appearance until 5 years later when he did New Cast Member or Arcade Fire, which was the cold open to another Tina Fey hosted episode.
Yeah, and I do like that Kristen's part was the smallest on details, and yet somehow Tina was able to guess this entire woman's backstory as well as knowing her fears. Bill played his sheer bewilderment at Tina's ability to make these extremely specific and somehow exactly correct niche guesses about the lives of strangers in these very well. And I do remember originally Stooge had written in his review, why couldn't they have written some explanation for how Tina knows all this about random people she's never met and is able to make these guesses? I think it works better. It might really betray the meaning of the sketch if they did that.
I completely agree with that, because even though we're bewildered by what she comes up with, it's just the entire conceit of it. It's like she's the only one who can understand everything. Very much like in Girl, Megan Thee Stallion says girl a couple times, and there's this big long speech about Ukraine. It's a nice little trope that I love, and the performances were absolutely great. We next have various commercials for various editions of The Celebrity Apprentice. And I gotta admit, I did kind of watch The Apprentice back in the day. That was before we knew what Donald Trump was actually all about. But the highlight of this for Bill is he's bringing back his John Mark Carr impression that I did on Weekend Update way back in season 31. He's there with Mary Jo Buttafuoco, played by Tina Fey, and the assignment that they got was making a sex tape.
Really? I always thought I had an innate natural charisma.
Which we have a small bit with Fred Armisen doing his Gene Simmons.
What did you think of the sex tape surprising new celebrity judge Gene Simmons?
If you want to make a hot tape, you gotta follow the Gene Simmons holy trinity of sex tapes. Lock the camera down, keep your shirt on, and blast a foreigner. That's guaranteed to keep every sex tape moist.
I was just looking at Daryl as Donald Trump, and at some points he kind of looked like Alec Baldwin as Trump, because it's such a crazy ass show, and like every 15 minutes there's a different kind of iteration of the Celebrity Apprentice, where the one with John Mark Carr is Celebrity Apprentice Special Victims Unit. Looking back on what was The Apprentice, I have a deep appreciation for this sketch.
I can't say I quite have the same appreciation for this sketch that you do. The first time Bill played John Mark Carr in season 32 played better for me, because me personally, that played better when the joke was just, he's confessing to all these ridiculous crimes there's no way he could have committed. And here the joke is, this guy is just creepy. And at one point, Daryl's Donald Trump says, your sex tape gave me the willies, man, and not in a good way. That gave me a moment of pause. Knowing what we know now about Donald Trump, we really underestimated him. Imagine being able to give Donald Trump the willies. Even Epstein wanted to have nothing to do with him at that point. Other parts I did like. Bit with Jason and Kristen at the beginning was wonderfully odd. And it's nice to see Keenan's Charles Barkley. Casey made a strong choice with whatever voice she was using, but I guess you can only do so much with a Rachel Ray impression, just like you can only do so much facially with a Donald Trump impression, which James Austin Johnson, his Trump is just vocal, so you gotta respect him for not going down the beaten path.
You know, until you mentioned the whole Williams thing, I never thought about that, so you just gave me something to really think about, yet I don't want to think about it, I think. At the very least, I watched her $40 a day show, which she went to different cities and was able to get breakfast, lunch, dinner, snack for $40, which I found very interesting. And yes, that is very much what Rachel Ray is like, amped up a little bit. There was an episode of Watch What Happens Live that had Rachel Ray and Bill on at the same time. The big highlight of the episode for Bill, the absolute classic. Is a take on a Food Network show, and the simple line from There Will Be Blood.
I drink your milkshake. I
I drink it up!
Aside from being an oil man, he's doing a show with his son, and that's the story about that one is where when Bill Hader develops impressions, he tries to find what's called a handle. For Daniel Plainview was, I'm an oil man. He repeated that before he went out on the stage, and the whole thing starts out with sort of a jib-jab introduction. So Amy and Bill's heads as the characters do this little sort of dancey thing with a rather hilarious theme song by Will Forte, who also was in the sketch as a patron. Bill's commitment to Daniel Day-Lewis, just like Daniel Day-Lewis commits to his parts, is so intense. I think at one point he was having a little trouble with his mustache, but it wasn't quite too obvious. I think it's a lot of people's favorite part.
I've abandoned my child! I've abandoned my boy! I've abandoned my child! Oh, here he is. He's right here.
The reaction from all of the people who, because I don't know about you, but if someone was coming into a place where I'm enjoying a nice milkshake and tries to drink my milkshake, I would have issues. So it has this comically long straw that he drinks it with, which so just from the visuals, the impression, and he apparently had to really fight to get this sketch on the air, but he did. Daniel Day-Lewis had seen it, and he was very impressed. We bring in Fred Armisen as Anton Chigurh from No Country for Old Men, I think.
Yes, that's it.
Thank you. And at the end, we have Tina Fey as Juno, someone who will appear on the next episode. Polar doesn't say anything, but what she does with her face and physically works very well. So this will always be a Bill Hader classic, one of his most loved impressions.
Pretty much agree with everything you said, Deej. I will have to admit that There Will Be Blood is something that I haven't gotten around to seeing yet. That's a shameful blind spot, I should correct. I do appreciate that this sketch does adhere to the rule of a parody should be just as funny if you're not familiar with the subject as if you are. This wasn't written that you needed to see There Will Be Blood to get the joke. All you needed to get was that the I drink your milkshake scene was the big meme and the big catchphrase that, high school kids latched onto from it. That's what makes it work. I mean, and Bill does give a real commanding and masterful performance. I don't know if Fred Armisen has the voice to pull off a Javier Bardem impression. And yeah, Tina's Juno is nice. And this episode does have a decent, almost the ideal balance of pop culture sketches versus political sketches, as much as SNL needs of both of those. And especially with this and the digital short, these are our two big, this is what going to the movies was like during this writer strike when you couldn't really watch TV. So these are the big movies everyone went to see in late 07, early 08. So it's one of the many ways this episode it's a big early 2008 time capsule of an episode.
I also will admit that any of the movies referenced in the sketch, I have not seen any of them. This is definitely what those at This Week at SNL would call the Boom Stamp Classic, but I'm not going to do the thing because that's their thing, not ours. So the last one where he's in is another brief appearance, but he's still there, is Lady Business. Now, around this time, Sex in the City was really popular. A lot of the other networks were trying to find another powerful woman-based show. Two shows at the time that are trying to cash in on that was Cashmere Mafia and Lipstick Jungle. So it uses a lot of the tropes from those series very effectively. Bill Hader's boss, played by Amy Poehler, Nicolette, announcing that
from now on, meetings are no longer mandatory. They're womandatory.
Tina Fey she's just like sort of the friend that maybe someone knows in college. Her job is suctioning dead rodents out from under houses. So they have Casey Wilson in the credits, but once again, this is her first show, understandably, but it's like, why have her there if you're not going to have her do anything? Could have been cut between dress and air, so you never know how those things are going to go. For some reason, Bill Hader was doing this duck face thing. I'm not sure why, but whatever worked for him to get into the character. I never watched the other offshoots because they didn't interest me, but I was very much a Sex and the City fan. And I will go on record that I am a Samantha.
Yeah, and it is funny to me that you mentioned Sex in the City was popular and all these girl boss feminism, women in power shows that this was a parody of, They basically tried to remake Sex in the City without the sex because this was a network show. It feels more like they're trying to remake Ally McBeal for the new millennium than anything, or just for the late aughts. This was a fun sketch. One line I liked from Kristen to Andy.
I don't think you can handle me.
Why is that?
Because I'm a bitch in the boardroom, a bore in the bedroom, and I'm a bear on the toilet.
And I also got a kick of Tina's character being this glamorous girl boss woman, despite her job being like dead animal removal or animal control.
And alas, that is the final appearance from Bill. But still, 6 appearances, one a really big one for him. This was a good show for him, which he definitely needed. For the following stuff, I don't have much to say about the cold open. The news anchors fawned over hopeful Democratic nominee Obama while barely paying attention to a delusional Hillary Clinton, as that time played by Amy Poehler. It was mentioned on Dude's blog that before the writer's strike, everything was yay Clinton. But then after that, it was yay Obama. And there's one thing in here that I had never heard of, which makes sense for me because being Canadian, I do sort of pay attention to what's going on over there, down there. But this completely escaped my attention. Apparently, there's this some lady called Obama Girl singing the song about how much she loved Obama. So I personally have no experience with that. They had some funny lines with the different Christians' different diseases, like that they came up with for the love of Obama, such as being totally in the tank for Senator Obama, Obama maniac, having a Barack attack. The Univision anchor is apparently a stalker. The first question to Obama: "Are you okay? Do you need anything?" Did like the way things were played, but not so much on the politics because, well, oh, Canada.
Most of my notes for this cold open, a long bit of a screed about Fred Armisen's Barack Obama, because this is the first episode we see that impression. I will encourage you to read my blog for my take on it. I would like to offer up a bit of SNL behind the scenes trivia. So we may have talked about one of our previous episodes about how they had Maya Rudolph attempt an Obama dress rehearsal, didn't work. With Keenan, there was some talk about putting him on this insane crash program to lose a ton of weight until they realize they can't. No one can lose that much weight in one summer. That's dangerously impossible. But what they did do during the strike was they held auditions specifically for black male comedians and performers who could do Obama. And among those that they auditioned were Wyatt Cenac, who was on The Daily Show, Donald Glover, Childish Gambino himself. And
I remember this, yeah.
And one guy who they did audition and did really want to hire was Jordan Peele, who was on Mad TV at the time still. But the problem was that Fox would not let Jordan Peele out of his Mad TV contract to join a competing show. So I guess that's how we ended up with Fred as the only viable option. Whoever played Obama during this time period wouldn't have been served that well by SNL's writing for him because they didn't really find a hook on the character. So it's best that Jordan Peele did his own Obama with his own hook on his own show 4 years later.
Oh, that's right, because for some reason I thought it was Aries Spears.
Oh, no, that he would have been way wrong for Obama. He had already left Mad TV years ago.
This is also where Terry Killen came from.
That's true.
The monologue. This is her first time hosting. She's mostly used to being a writer. Now that she's doing 30 Rock, she trying to find her sense as an actress. Although I do like the reference to the strike. She goes into this long thing about all the contract speak.
That the Writers Guild of America has negotiated a deal with the studios that would raise the rate of writers' compensation for ad-supported electronic sell-through downloads from a flat rate of $600 for 26 weeks per 100,000 downloads to a percentage of 0.036% of the distributor's gross of any ad revenue generated by said streaming after an initial window of 17 days, starting in 3 years. So, yeah.
As someone who has worked in the film industry before, one of my jobs was to send packets out for negotiations of things and contract summary letters for productions. That a lot of the contract stuff does get pretty darn confusing. She rattles it off completely effortlessly.
That is impressive. Effortlessly, I'd say that's...
And then a wild Steve Martin appears, who starts to coach her because Steve Martin did start as a writer. You can find out about in Steve Martin's book, Born Standing Up. I have listened to the audio version that is narrated by Steve Martin. Very entertaining, very educational about all the stuff, all the things he's come from. Asked for different reads on the phrase, I can do it.
Now let me hear you say it. I can do it.
I can do it.
Now say it a little louder now.
I can do it.
A little softer now.
I can do it.
Now say it like you're in an old-fashioned movie.
I can do it.
Now say it like a cartoon mouse.
I can do it.
Now say it like a cartoon mouse in Spanish.
Hey, what do I say?
Now say it like a drunk Chinese woman.
Oh, I can't do it.
You know what I think? I think you can do it.
I think I can do it.
And then there's the slapping. So the first one is to get her attention. The second one was just for fun. And the third one is because of the law of three in comedy. Very, very nice, pleasant, effective. There's also a pan over to, you don't want to be like the writers, and shows some of the writers at the side, actual writers on the show. They work well together, and just it was very heartwarming and charming.
I would also agree this was a charming monologue. The streaming monetization deal that they worked out, that was kind of funny to me, not just for like the long-winded fine print of it, but also you have to keep in mind that back in like 07, 08, they're mostly talking about YouTube clips put out through the like official channels for all the networks and Hulu clips and highlights. Boy, I don't think you can watch full library of an entire run of a series on Hulu or Netflix just yet. I do remember at this point, Hulu was just clips of the latest shows, and at most, you might be able to watch just the last 5 episodes of whatever series has if you missed it one week and wanted to catch up. A little bit funny to hear how legacy media was catching up with streaming in terms of monetizing, getting the writers and performers their due. And I like how Steve entered this monologue because he came in right after Tina said she always saw herself more as a writer than a performer. And he just leaps up on stage and says, whoa, wait. And after the applause break, he says, well, I was just sitting at home watching the show, and I heard you say you're more a writer than a performer, so I had to stop by. I got a kick out of seeing the brief shot of the then current writers at Steve Shades, who from left to right, you see Simon Rich, Marika Sawyer, and Rob Klein. You don't want to end up like these dumpy, pathetic losers, all weak and young. You gotta stand tall because you're a performer. And this monologue does kind of mark a pivotal turning point in Tina's career when you think about it, because she was in a similar class to people like Conan O'Brien and Larry David before John Mulaney came along, but she was in a similar class in just SNL writers who made it big, except she would be the only one who joined the cast, although she mostly did Weekend Update at that time, so she was still just a writer and less of a cast member in some people's eyes. But she worked on the show, did Weekend Update, left to produce her own sitcom where she was more of a lead performer than a writer. And at this time, it was a critical darling, and the ratings would soon follow when she would come back the next season for another certain political impression. So I like how this represents more her turning point from getting to be on SNL and fill her own niche as a comedian, and more her becoming not just a real performer, but also an influential producer as well. After 30 Rock, she would produce things like Unbreakable Kimmy Schmidt and help other people get off the ground, but not necessarily act in big roles in. This whole episode marks an interesting turning point in Tina's career that helps her really take off.
So the next sketch is Rock of Love 2. This is based on the Bret Michaels 2-season mass dating show, kind of like The Bachelor, but not. Jason Sudeikis as Bret Michaels. There's 4 ladies on stage. Amy Poehler as her character Amber with the one leg. As she says, rocking the one leg. Kristen Wiig as Peyton Turner. Casey Wilson as Christy Joel Mueller, and Tina Fey as Daisy De La Hoya. And these are actual contestants on the show. As a matter of fact, Daisy had a spin-off series called Daisy of Love. And this is time to admit some of my past, where I used to love all these VH1 shows. I was obsessed with all the different ones, like all the ones living in the house and everything from Flava Flav to all the ones. So they really just sort of stopped because one of the spin-offs, Megan Wants a Millionaire, unfortunately, one of the male cast members ended up killing his ex-girlfriend. And that kind of ended that whole boom. But in 2011, I attended a reality TV convention called Reality Rocks. And it was pretty fun. I liked it. I got a picture of Eric Roberts, got to meet some of the people I really liked from, I was big on Storage Wars then. They'd be hard to do again, especially with how they did it back then. The performances are great, kind of switches tone from being Rock of Love. Amber, Rock of the One Leg, gets eliminated. And as she's hopping over to say goodbye, she's farting all the way. It starts to feature this character a bit, which is completely ridiculous. So that just added an extra layer of funny onto it.
Yeah, I thought this was decent, but maybe not lead sketch right after the monologue and first fake commercial decent. It had potential to be interesting. I like where it was going. Jason made it great. Bret Michaels, I liked his line about how doing what any guy would do to find love, just get a bunch of dicey strippers and shove them all in a McMansion and Reseda and put them in bikinis and have them smash dirt bikes into each other. And Tina as Daisy was pretty funny. Someone who I would have only known from seeing clips of her on The Soup with Joel McHale from that time. And I did like Kristen's one line about how she can't get Bret Michaels to make out with him. And yet I've seen him make out with a pair of sweatpants once. Other than that, part of me wishes that they could have found another way to make fun of these trashy reality dating shows without having to turn everyone into an Amber sketch. But there's only so many ways you can comment on reality TV.
I forgot about the one bit. She tries touching his head.
No, don't do. Trust me.
An obvious joke, but still funny.
So I watched the Weekend Update again today. I don't have a lot to comment on it. I did like what Tina Fey did at the end, especially mentioning that being a bitch is a good thing, not a bad thing. I did enjoy the Mike Huckabee bits, that they actually got the real Huckabee there. Although later on, he would not be so impressed with Saturday Night Live. But at least at the time, he was willing to go on and help make fun of himself with the not knowing when to leave. At the end of his segment, he's still there, and he's still there. And yet he's still there. I finally get him to leave. So not a lot of the jokes were really clicking for me. After going through all the jokes, I think the only one I really kind of liked was the one with the missing kitten, where he joins a hip-hop dance group when they got the picture of the little dancing kittens. Because, I'm a cat lady. Anytime I see cats, I'm going to love it.
Yeah, and I like that. And also, Seth's jokes about pieces of a destroyed satellite falling from the sky, and Amy's jokes about Kosovo gaining independence, to which Hillary Clinton responded, cool, so who gets those delegates? And as for Mike Huckabee, fuck that guy. I mean, years later, he would make himself look like an ass unintentionally through his own Twitter feed and through his own, David Letterman for, fundamentalist Christians late night show there at, 6 p.m. on that TBN channel. And his daughter went on to be one of Trump's press secretaries. So, at least they helped make him look palatable tonight. But, that's a lightning in a bottle moment. That can't really happen ever again. And as for Tina's women's news segment, she opened with some one-liners that felt like leftover season 30 and 31 update jokes that got cut. But the Hillary stuff was strong, and it was smart of her to make the centerpiece of it. I did like the lines about concerned Hillary can't control her husband, or just people put off that they're a married couple, but, they're having just as much sex as George Bush and Jeb Bush are. And one line that stood out to me, she quoted Rush Limbaugh as saying, Americans don't want to see their president turn into an old lady right in front of their eyes. Really? Well, you guys didn't seem to mind when Ronald Reagan did that. Tina did lay out a very, a well thought out and fair and rational take on why Hillary should be president and why Bill should be advising her. So I do respect her for standing by her own personal convictions, saying Hillary's the right candidate because she's a bitch and bitches get stuff done. Ages today, maybe it's just the way she said it. Maybe it just sounded like one of those things that could have only been expressed that way at that time. But, I get what she was going for, and I get where her head's at. But the one odd thing about it is Tina ending it with the phrase, bitch is the new black. I mean, calling anything the new black, just people stopped saying that a very long time ago. In fact, that might be the last time anyone said that, because now it just sounds incredibly awkward, and where did it even come from? She may just have admitted that she and Amy personally are in the tank for Hillary after the show just did a sketch about how the media's in the tank for Obama, and still some Republicans are pretty angry that they're not admittedly in the tank for any of them, but, that's politics and how it relates to SNL, so...
Okay, so the new black thing, that is a fashion reference. Has nothing to do with race. It's strictly how they will say orange is the new pink, or as came out with the titles of the series, orange is the new black. Long-standing fashion trope when they're trying to promote, you like this thing, but this is the thing you need to like now. Although my favorite Tina Fey Weekend Update moment was the one with the cake, where she brought the American flag cake and she was talking about women-related stuff and just sitting there eating the cake, and eventually Michael Che reaches over, just give me some of that cake, grabs it on. So that's the one I really like.
Just that I remembered.
Alrighty, well, we continue on with Wedding Toast. This was a character that Jason has played once before, Ed Mahoney. Tina Fey was basically there as window dressings. I don't think that Tina or Will actually said anything through that. I think just maybe reacted. Kristen started off the sketch as, I guess, a former college roommate giving a speech on how lonely she is, which makes sense. I remember going through my friend's wedding a few years ago when I was very single, and I was feeling very upset. I'm here with all the celebrating love, yet I don't have any. Kind of get where Jenny's coming from. Ed Mahoney is just doing the most crude kind of wedding speech that you can ever come up with. So, it was okay. I don't have a lot to say on this one.
Might have been my favorite sketch of the night, an underrated deep cut from Jason I always liked. Once I saw him walk up with that disheveled hair and that voice saying that Kristen has more problems than a math book after she chugged a glass of wine, putting his hand on Forte's shoulder saying, I've known this old sack of potatoes for 25 years. I knew I was in for a real treat there. I do also like how Tina, Will, and Kristen played their extreme disgust off him well, the exact right moments. I like how he said,
when Billy asked me to be his best man, I thought long and hard about it. And as some of you ladies out there know, my thoughts are the only thing long and hard about me. No, I'm kidding. It's my thoughts and my craps.
He went on to say Tina's character had a body like she was sculpted out of marble by a sex maniac, which is perfect for Forte because he's laid more pipe than the Mario brothers and probably ate the same amount of mushrooms. And then goes into a story about one time we did mushrooms and got into a fist fight with a bag, with a bag of M&Ms, and then made out for an hour. French kiss for an hour. Poop, drugs, and gay stuff, every bride's dream. So he segues into an area he couldn't have anticipated. He talks about how marriage is about lying your balls off to each other and then hoping that they die. So it's just nearly a perfect sketch for me.
Okay, I will concede the line about the his thoughts being long and hard being the only thing about it being long and hard. I'm gonna skip past the second one because Poo Poo Mirror just weeks ago. Yeah. And I'm not gonna worry about the musical performances because I really don't want to talk about anything about Carrie Underwood.
Me neither.
Because she's made a bit of a turn. And the very last one before the good night is the return of Virginia Horson, which is our second digital short. Virginia Horson advertises rise on her hot air balloon because of the high cost of airplane travel. This is a sort of sequel to Virginia Horson's Pony Express. Not my favorite. It was brief, which is great. That does help. That is a point in his favor. I did appreciate the low-tech commercial graphics they were doing with kicking things, but on the whole, it's not one I really go back to in my thoughts.
I mean, yeah, I don't go back to a lot either, but I like seeing it when I do. It was packed with enough floating green screen absurdity to work for me. I just like her walking past the security line saying, "See you later, suckers," and then just punching out words like terrorism and then ending with the caption, "winner." Pretty heavy Tim and Eric vibes. It's nice to see that level of absurdity on SNL, even if it doesn't go as far as being as that abrasively abstract. But then again, a lot of late aughts viral chasing comedy was just like that, so you can't really accuse them of that was like everyone was kind of ripping off everyone else visually, so no one can really cry foul there.
We come to the good night that I do want to mention specifically because this was in celebration of Don Pardo's 90th birthday. Bring out a cake and he's trying to blow out the 90 candles that are on there. Many people complain about, and I agree, is do the sweet moment with Don Pardo for his birthday. Why do you cut off the good nights? Kind of similar to what happened in last week's SNL with Coleman Domingo. At the good night, she's starting to tell about an inspirational speech about all the boys and other kids out there trying to be inspired. And as soon as he started this heartwarming speech, and after for the boys, which made it sound really crass, they just cut off the good nights. And that wasn't only up here in Canada, that was also down there in the States. Please, please, please stop doing that. In SNL general news, for the longest time, Global TV in Canada has been the broadcaster for Saturday Night Live. Most recently, Crave, which is a streaming service from Bell Media, which also owns CTV, which is one of the major networks in Canada. Crave and CTV got the rights for SNL UK. So on Saturday nights, you can watch live on CTV Comedy, and then the next day it'll be available on Crave. As of next season, Saturday Night Live is completely moving over to the CTV Crave banner. We have come to the conclusion of the other episode of We Heart Hater. And Casey, what do we do next episode?
We're starting to wind down our coverage of season 1 of Documentary Now. We'll be doing Gentle and Soft, the story of the Blue Jean Committee. That is a 2-part episode, and we'll be doing it in 2 parts as well.
Yes, because the previous episode, not one trace of Bill. So the documentary they base this on is The Story of the Eagles. Bill gets to play bass again, which is awesome. Thank you once again for joining us. Like, share, subscribe, and we just had a whole dump of episodes onto YouTube because for some reason, when the RSS feed was posting them to our account as private videos. Same thing happened with Saturday Night Lady. For watching on listening or watching on YouTube, we just a whole big episode dump there. But on that note, I am Dave Barons and will continue to be.
And I will still be Casey Killingsworth until I'm informed otherwise.
As the saying goes, we heart hater.
We heart hater. It's what we do.
Thank you for listening to We Heart Hater. If you enjoyed this episode and you'd like to help support the podcast, please subscribe and leave a rating and review on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, or wherever you get your podcasts. We Heart Hater is a presentation of Wacky Notion Productions. Created by Deeds Barons. Hosted by Deeds Barons and Casey Killingsworth. Recording and editing by Deeds Barons. Intro and outro music by Music Unlimited, used under Creative Commons license, courtesy of pixabay.com.